Okay, so now we're on the lab 3 with the correlations. So on the left, as always, you're seeing my data, and on the right, you are seeing the lab. Um, as always, I'm going to start from the original, the one that says Heil-490 original, because you want a nice clean sheet each time. So then we're going to go in and we're going to save as, and I'm going to name it lab 3. Lab 3. And since I have such things already, I'm just replacing it. Cool. All right. So I need to open a new sheet here and make a table. So press plus on the bottom is the best way to do that. Let me zoom in a little bit so it's a little more legible. I'm gonna copy the top row right away. So subset, correlation, direction, strength. Okay, and I'm gonna make these a little wider for the sake of just legibility. Doesn't have to be too wide, just a little bit more. The subset's gonna need space for sure. All right, and so under subset, the first thing you'll put is all, and then after that, your 3 locations. Mine happen to be called Roro or something. Vikiana, as we've discussed, and oh, I'm missing an I. Oh, how could I misspell that, honestly? And then this one, Kachiro. Okay, save the file. All right, so then on page 2, we're creating sheets per location. So, oh, name this tab correlation. Anyway, so I'm going to make a sheet per location, okay? There are a couple ways to do this. One is to filter and then copy paste, but it is prone to a little bit of error if you don't know what you're doing. So what I'm about to show you will totally work. So if you aren't sure, just do it this way. I'm going to start by making copies of the data tab. So when you right click and choose copy, this menu pops up. At the bottom, there's a little checkbox that says create copy. So choose that and then move your copy to the end. Just highlight move to end and press OK. And then I'm going to do this twice more because I want 3 new tabs. Create a copy, move to the end. And move our copy, create a copy, move to the end. Done. So we just did up through B2, and now I'm going to rename them according to the locations. Ready? So either right click rename or double click. And then the second one, and then the third one. Done. Great. So, and then what I'm going to do is get rid of the rows that don't pertain to these locations. So starting with the one with the R, I turned off filtering so I could turn it back on for you. So as it says in here, you have to delete the rows that don't pertain to location. So if yours is not already filtered, what you're going to do is highlight A1 through E1, or rather the first row, and then you're going to go to filter, which for me is towards the right here. It says sort and filter. There's a drop-down menu. You go to filter and turn it on. And then you'll see these little tabs here, right? So I just did step B5 and B6, and now I'm on B7. Click on the arrow that's appeared in C1, which is this guy, and then choose A to Z to sort. Bam. Now it goes 1 location, 2 location, 3 locations. And I'm going to delete all the rows that don't pertain to the location that's named in this tab. You do that by, so you go to the very left, right? It turns green when you highlight these numbers, right? You're going to do that and highlight the rows that don't pertain to this location. So this location's Roro. I'm going to highlight Vikiana and then right click, choose delete. And the same thing for Kachiro. Highlight, right click, delete. So now this tab only contains rows having to do with Roro. Now the same for Vikiana. I'm going to turn on filter, sort A to Z, and then I just want Vikiana, so I'm going to highlight the rows for Kachiro and Roro. Highlight, right click, delete. Now there are only rows pertaining to Vikiana. And then I go to Kachiro, and I do the same thing. Highlight the top row, go to filter, sort and filter, choose filter itself, turn it on. Click in the drop-down menu in C1, sort A to Z, and now I just need Kachiro, so I highlight and delete the R's and the K's. Bam. All right, perfect. So the sheet should roughly look like the sample below. Note that there are now 5 sheets whose names you can read along the bottom, data, correlations, and your 3 locations. And then you will save the file. All right, so in the data sheets, so the 3 locations in the main sheet, but we're going to type in a formula to calculate the correlation in each of those places. It says the 3 data sheets, the data sheet and the 3 locations. We're going to click off to the right and put in a formula. I'm going to start with data, okay? So over here, I'm going to pick a random cell, G3, G4, H2, whatever you like, and I'm going to type a formula. Under C2A, right, it says for the data sheet, comma, type, and then this is your formula, equal sign, correl, C-O-R-R-E-L, left parentheses, D2, colon, D31, so that's my first array, comma, E2, colon, E31, end parentheses. And before I press enter, it's really nice that I can see right here that it's highlighting the cells it pertains to, and it shows you one array in blue and one array in red. Now you don't have to look at this. If you press enter too fast, no big deal, but it's nice. It's nice to see that this is what it's applying to. And you press enter and it gives you a statistic. And in fact, if you click on it and you look up in the formula bar here above the data, you'll see the formula that I entered if you want to look at it. In fact, if you wanted to highlight the rows again, you can click at the end of it inside this bar. Okay, anytime you want to know what it's applying to, that's a good way to see it, and I'll color code it. All right, so this is my correlation for all of the data. So I'm going to copy it, go to the correlations tab, and paste values. Okay, so I can right click and just choose paste values. I can then paste and then change it. I can use the drop down menu under paste, right? It's the exact same thing that we've done in the previous. You could also hand copy it if you don't want to deal with the paste values thing, okay? Now don't worry about direction and strength. We'll get there in a second, okay? That'll be in section D. So we're in section C still. So I did the first one, which was the formula here under 2A. Now I need to do the ones for the location sheet, which is this, equals correl D2 to D11, etc., because there's less rows. So I'm going to do otherwise exactly the same. Click off to the side, equals C-O-R-E-L, left parentheses, D2 colon D. Now it's just 11. Notice if I had put 31, suddenly there's a bunch of irrelevant cells involved. I don't think it would actually do anything in this case. But just be aware, that's what it does. Comma, E2 through E11. For the record, if I were to do something horizontal, like I3, it would do that. Or I5, it would do that. That's kind of what it's doing. It's creating a range. So anyway, E2 through E11, and there I am, my blue and my red, and press enter. And this is a statistic for one of the locations. So the one with the R, this is my correlation. Go over to the correlation table and paste values. Great. Okay. Repeat for the next one. So over here equals correl D2 through D11, comma E2 through E11. Actually, as a point of argument, just so you know, right? So if I were to accidentally put in E1, let's say, oops, yes, even that, right? It's gonna, if you accidentally include the title row for this correlation, it won't calculate it. It'll be like, I don't know what that is, okay? So if that happens, you can either retype the formula or go up here to the formula bar and just click next to the thing and change it. Left and right do funny things up there, so just click next to it and choose delete or back or whatever, or just retype it, either way. Actually, as a point of interest, if I'm in this and I wanted to apply to more things, I can also drag. I'm just going to point that out. You could drag these too. And in fact, and I'll show you this on the third location, you can create the formula that way too. So let's go ahead and copy this third correlation, 48449, to this location here, paste, change it to values, and this guy. So this is actually the other way to do this formula. So you'll type out the function name, correl, and then I can actually drag and select the arrays, comma, drag and select. And you know, not to tell you bad habits, but I don't actually have to close the parentheses if I don't want to. It'll go, you wanted to close it, I'm sure. Notice it's there now. Okay, so that's my last one. Zero, paste, change to values, great. All right, So now I've done section C, except for now I gotta save it. Bam. All right, now we're in section D, which is the last one. That wasn't too bad, right? After we do section D, we can talk briefly about if you wanted to look at the correlation chart, just for the sake of argument, how you would do that. So bear with me for a second. All right, so section D, 1, you'll be making interpretation as to the strength of the correlation. To do that, first look at the correlations in the correlation sheet. You're going to write the direction first in the direction column. Literally, if it's positive, write positive. If it's negative, write negative. These are all positive. So I'm literally just going to write positive, 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 positive. Done. Then for strength, you're looking at the ranges in D3, 4, 5. So anything from 0 to 0.3, and that includes 0 to negative 0.3, so the absolute value, 0.3, it's called weak. Now that doesn't apply to any of mine because my smallest is 0.3 something, okay? Mine are all pretty correlated if you look at that. 0.9 is very correlated, okay? So moderate is 0.3, if you want to be 0.31 or 0.301, whatever. 0.3 to 0.7 are moderate correlations, and that applies to all Fickiana and Kachiro. Great. So what's left is strong here for Ruruk-Roro. It's a strong correlation. It's very correlated. And in fact, I think let's go ahead and make charts for Ruruk-Roro and Kachiro, because I feel like it'll be very clear. We should see a strong positive correlation for this one and kind of a middling to low one here for this one. So let's go into Ruruk-Roro and highlight these two columns and then go over to, you don't have to do this. This is just for the sake of argument. And then here under recommended charts and stuff, mine, you can kind of see the scatter here. You also could go into this drop-down menu where it says see all charts. And under recommended, it's saying scatter, which is the correct answer, unlike what Google Sheets was trying to do. And as you can see, that's not too bad. Look at that. It's pretty close. And in fact, I believe if I wanted to add a trend line, yeah, it'll tell you that's actually the line of the correlation. It's pretty good. Pretty tightly packed around that. That's nice. Whereas if I were to run over here and do the same thing for, this is the one with K, which remember was only like 0.3 something, which is still moderate, but like barely. So insert charts, it's still suggesting a scatter plot. Cool. That doesn't look nearly as correlated. It's kind of, there's some down here in the bottom, there's some here in the top, and there's some guys here over on the right. And once again, if I wanted to add the trend line, just to look at it, notice how far away the data is from the trend line. Trend line is like where it would be if the correlation were clean, and it's clearly not. Right? So you're seeing very much that these are not particularly correlated. Whereas the Ruruk-Roro, it's pretty close. They're clustered around the trend line. Okay? So that's how we know, or that's how we can visualize it. And you're welcome to do that if you're interested in doing that. And if you wanted to talk about it in your lab, you could, in theory. But honestly, I haven't asked you for this. You really just need the correlations table because this tells you everything. What I just did helps you see it. That's all. Okay. All right. Well, with that, this one's done. I've saved it again. And